First roundtable ever around the entrepreneurship, and I have 5 entrepreneurs to pick their brain and come up with some answers and some ideas. So maybe we just go around the room, and you guys can do a quick introduction. Maybe I'll pass the ball to Robert, and then you can pass the ball to someone else.
That sounds good. Thank you much. My name is Robert Thomas. I've been founder now for 1.5 years. Founded Moyai end of 2024. And we do agent reliability engineering. Have a background in tech, data. Been working at fintechs, banks, and cybersecurity companies before that, based here in Amsterdam. And I'll give it to Nasir. I think you muted.
Yes. Something wrong with the sound. It's a good mic test for us to do the introduction. Maybe we'll pass the ball first to Ram while Nasir tries it out a bit.
Right. Hey, hi everyone. My name is Ram. I'm 45 years old. More than half of my life I've been building software and teams. And Netherlands is my 6th country I'm living in. Study-wise, I'm a comp science grad and then turned into an MBA after that. Kind of got a luckiness to kind of see both sides of the picture, the macro and the micro side of it. I'm still very close to the engineering, at the same time also close to the strategy side of it. And from a startup perspective, I had to start down, I must say, before COVID. It was an autonomous drone company that I had started off, but we had to kill it in the midway. Again, I'm getting into the weeds of it, with the way how micro teams are getting formed in the real world. So I'm really curious and excited to be here today in the table. Nasir.
Let's try again. Do you hear me?
Awesome.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm Nasir. I'm a software engineer by trade and been an entrepreneur for several years now. I was a software agency before, and now I'm bootstrapping Rudy's AI. It's an AI agent. Basically, now we actually moved on fully to building agents to help building websites, especially for building websites and growing websites for a lot of non-techie people, actually. So, I'm very happy to be here.
And you pass the ball to?
I pass the ball to Christoph.
Yeah, I'm Christoph. I started bootstrapping a company about a year ago, maybe a bit less, but it's going to have its birthday very soon. It's called Done That, and we do AI time tracking. It's been a fun year so far. I'm going to pass it on to Matti.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So, very nice to see you all here, and nice to meet the new faces. I'm Matti. I'm originally Iranian and live in Amsterdam for a few years now. But background-wise, I'm the carrier. I'm a tech guy, if you can name it. But I'm a curious guy. So, and I try to, as much as possible, solve problems. Doesn't matter when and what, but I think that's what I really enjoy. For the past years, I work in different companies, but also I build companies, and was very fun. I'm also now advising and having startups at the same time. I'm a tech director in Mr. Mavis. But for me, it's just looking around and find new ideas and connect with amazing people like this table. I think there's a lot that humans can do still. And I think AI is for me just fun. Let's see where it goes. So
yeah, and all of you guys are Wall of Famers that already been in the podcast, but we had an extra guest that I invited also to be part of this. Is Antonio. He's not yet popped the podcast cherry and be one of the Hall of Famers, but he was interested in having a little bit of a conversation. And of course, I wanted to bring some Portuguese blood into the mix as well. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but I get Antonio to step in for the Portuguese crowd. Antonio, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey guys, sorry, I'm kind of dropping here out of nothing, but right. Very quickly, yeah. So I'm probably the least tech guy here. So I started my career in law school, strange as it may seem. Then in the first year, I wanted to build a recommender system for notes and sharing stuff with my colleagues and etc. And this was back in '97. So I immediately, when people started looking around me like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, it's going to be painful. So fast forward, I went to corporate, quite boring stuff for 10 years, banks and telcos. But I was bored of that life. I wasn't learning anything. And, corporate jobs are what they are. So I said, well, let's go to startups because startups are fun. But this was back in 2010 when Lisbon was about to kind of explode. I wanted also to change a few things there. Lisbon was a very, let's say, startup-centric town, but in the sense of it's the capital. We exist. Nothing else exists. And my vision of the country was slightly different. I wanted to have like a distributed type of R&D activity, bringing people from all sorts of parts of the country and etc. And they said no. So I said, you know what? I'm bored of this. Let's move to London. And so on and so on. Back in 2014, I had my own AI startup here. Some interesting stuff. We did a project that was with the deep learning, and this was a classification of boats in the Mediterranean for the French multinational Thales. And between 14 and 17, I had at least 2 or 3 startups. Machine learning is hard. There's not a lot of revenue there. There's a lot of pain, but not a lot of revenue. So I went back to corporate just to think, I need a more professional old life. But then I got seriously bored again because, they hired me to essentially launch the technical side of privacy in a global thing. And I was working with a lot of people in China and Singapore and etc. But again, corporate, you can barely do anything of value. It's a lot of bullshit jobs. So I don't like really bullshit jobs. I really like to use my brain. I love to read new stuff about data management and information management and how we can use things in a way that is meaningful for humans. So more recently, with a bunch of other people from ML, GRC, lawyers, it's quite a broad branch of people. We launch a startup studio. So we launch companies on our own. So we're real builders. It's information and data first, always. But we also help others to launch their stuff. And we also have a bunch of builders here. People exactly like you. And that's it.
And
sorry for the long intro.
We did mention that you don't like bullshit, but you didn't mention what is the name of your company.
Oh, it's No BS Ventures. We weren't as direct. We are called No BS Ventures for a reason.
Cool. And so, guys, so the idea that I had is to have a kind of roundtable discussion, having a couple of ideas tossed into, and you guys all have built companies here in Europe, and we see it a lot of people, especially in the LinkedIn's, and so far complaining about the startup scheme in Europe. And I think more recently we had Peter, the creator of OpenCloud, getting hired by OpenAI and saying that whatever you wanted to build would be impossible to build in Europe. So, first hot question out of the gate: how do you guys feel about that? Is it that hard to build a company in Europe? I see Robert.
I mean, I could go. I can start on it. I think I have never seen somebody so or like people being so interested in the job change on LinkedIn ever. So I think you gotta have that credit. No, I think Europe is a really good place. But maybe if it depends on like which values you hold. So I think like we see traditionally strong open source technical founders. They tend to be from Europe or Europe universities, and maybe the more shiny, more commercial products they tend to be launched in the US, and I think that is like causing a bit of the dissidence. So you see a lot of people that say like, yeah, well, it's only about regulation in Europe. But it could also mean that you're building a better product that intrinsically has a better usage or has a more fair contract with the users of that platform. So I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a benefit. That being said, I do think that you cannot build a business without selling also in the US. So it's kind of a discussion that is useless because you're going to sell worldwide anyway, especially if it's SaaS.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any other experiences here?
I think what Robert said is valid. And also, what I tend to realize after working in Europe for over 12 years is if you design in Europe or design for European people, right, the more chances that it's suitable for the rest of the world coming to the privacy and whatever, right? All of the way that we handle the security in the design, it becomes a normal piece of cake, you know. So design in Europe, but built for the world. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and one of the points that you were touching about, sorry, Nasir, on the differences between the US and Europe and being the more shiny toys on the US and the more open source in Europe, it's kind of interesting because the thing that he was also complaining about is ended up creating an open source thing when he was in Europe, and as he goes to the US he becomes a closed source company, which kind of has a funny name, which I think they have open in the name but not really. It's kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, Nasir, sorry, I was cutting you off.
Oh, no worries. No, so I was just saying the problem would be always that it would take like triple the time to build, to go through that. I think. But I mean, at the same time, like, I personally try to have a perspective because I come from Iran, same as Mati. So like from that perspective, like it's fantastic because then I can actually easily set up business and everything. But at the same time, after several years, then you start feeling the frictions around. Like I was on the phone call waiting behind the line with the Dutch tax authority today for 1 hour. So not really the most pleasant experiences you want to go through when you want to deal with like some basic stuff where it's probably the places it's mostly irrelevant. Actually.
How is the panorama in London versus the Netherlands?
And also, just want to add on top of what Nazir said, right? What Nazir said is like reminds me of this blue ocean and red ocean concepts. I think the US is really red ocean. You know, every small idea that you probably spar on a coffee table with one of the co-founders out there or any other company, right? The chances is very overcrowded already. You know, just for the sake of me being in the SFO for a couple of weeks already could get my feed completely biased, right? Number one. And number two is the people that you talk to, it gets you a sense that everything is done that and it's all there already. So you tend to see the bit of a red ocean thing there. But when it comes to the Europe, I see people are really, they know the skill and people are quite talented from universities I met. Huh? So, and they're security conscious. So kind of a blue ocean is what I see here. Just want to put those things out there.
I think at the same time, like you said, like when you're in San Francisco, right? Like I just feel the energy there is completely different because everybody is working on the same thing, right? Like you would think Amsterdam is a big tech community. Like I try to find a similar vibe here of like people excited and building, and like this podcast is trying a bit of this, I guess, right? But it's so much harder to build a community like this here in Amsterdam, or like I was living in Berlin before, bit same story. But I think at the same time, like founding isn't everything in my life, and I like life here, right? Like if it would be just about like where can you found the best company, like probably the States, right? Like, but it's all trade-offs. And I like the point that who made it, I forgot, but that basically like building on the things that are strong in Europe, like privacy, right? Like if you build a product in this space, I think you can really leverage that. Like done that, for example, is like privacy focused time tracking, like these kind of things. But if it's just about like talent and capital and all the good stuff, it's just going to be hard to compete, no?
I think it's the main thing, to be honest, I see from the differences is about like the cash flow, right? I think that makes a huge difference here. The US, the people are more into gambling. I think that also comes to business. It's similar. Because one of the things is they always try to be the first to invest. Here, they want to be the last to invest because they want to have a secure land that they put their money and have the most out of it. While in the US, they also consider that they are more risk averse, let's say, than here, if you consider the investors. But also when it comes to like really bootstrapping things here, it's about, again, connections in Europe. Europe is a lot about connections, my feeling. And to be honest, there's a kind of invisible monopoly in Europe because of all these limitations and slowness. If you're the first out there, you will be safe for the rest of your life. And that's a bad thing because in the US, you can be taken over easily by the competitors because the market is so dynamic. I think here we are just going slow, but steady, let's say. But also then at the end, we also consider the life-work balance is very important, right? In the US, now Jeff Bezos renamed it and called it life-work harmony. I think this is the different way to look at it. But at the end, I think considering the pros and cons for, I just consider the youngsters like us. Sometimes you are so thirsty and you are so aggressive that you want to build something. You want to even be facing with the reality, is it a good one or not? I think Europe can fool you for a few years, but in US you will be knowing it in a few weeks that you have a place or not. I think there's pros and cons to it, but I mean, if I'm going to be the bad cop here, I think for Europe, it's about our investors that more into real estate investment than a startup investment. I think that's quite a pitfall.
You talked about risk, Madi. I find it so counterintuitive that like founding as a founder in Europe is like so much less risky because we have like great social security nets and like all the other stuff that makes Europe so great. So you would expect more founders here than in the States, where actually like a lot more is on the line, right? Like you just risk your financial bankruptcy basically. But then still there are so few here, and like I'm curious if you guys have a intuition for why.
That's true, but to be honest, that's a very valid point. At the same time, that's the opposite when it comes to investors. I don't know, maybe that's something, but also from the founders, if you consider myself, then what you don't have, even if Amsterdam is a good example in Europe, being a kind of a startup hub for itself. But in general, you have a lot of accelerations, but I mean, just do the calculations between what is in the North America and Europe. This is quite minimal from the acceleration programs, venture capitals, venture studios. Now, Antonio quite interested in venture studio because I have this idea for now 2 years to build something also similar, because I think we just don't have enough of it. I mean, even if we build, there's not enough of it. And I think in US, it's very easy. When you check the venture builders or venture studios in North America, this is quite a common thing, which has a success rate of 35% on the papers and theory. But here, you just, maybe in the Netherlands, I just know one, which is working, which is Builders in Rotterdam. It's quite limited. I think that's a scale is also different between the Netherlands and US, based on my observations.
Maybe
Much
one
can be
result from
said.
this. Sorry.
Much can be said on the venture studios, but I have interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking like maybe one effect of this is that we have a lot more bootstrapped founders in Europe, like percentage-wise, when you compare it to the States, right? I think like at least I am. I think somebody else in this call also said they're bootstrapped, right? Like it's what's Levels, the guy, he's Dutch. Like maybe this just comes from this like social security net, not a lot of investors, less capital. That this is the route that founders in Europe
let's
take.
use two major examples, which I think speak very highly about this difference. So here I'm bootstrapping a studio. It took me a year and a half to get the team together, organized, aligned with the plan, with everything. It was an excruciating pain. The main reason why I was able to do it is simple. I'm an entrepreneur, so my threshold of pain is obviously very high. And I failed a lot of times already, so I know how to avoid those big pitfalls. And I'm probably helpful towards other people who might not be in that position. But to cut the story short, so bootstrapping versus, let's put it this way, as an example, there is a recent studio in the US who developed just a bunch of agents. They're basically OpenAI, whatever type of stuff. They just built on top of it a sort of a ChatGPT for entrepreneurs. And just based on this ChatGPT for entrepreneurs, they started to say, okay, now I'm going to take a very small equity stake of your entire operations, and I'm going to supply you with a bunch of apps around it. And their concept was, instead of building unicorns, let's build donkey corns. And they got 10 million. And I'm looking at all of this, frankly, load of bullshit, which is, and I'm saying, you're just selling credit. And on top of it, you're taking, I don't know, people's equity of their hard-earned businesses over a promise that you're going to supply them with applications that you're not even telling them about. And on the top of it, you're calling them dumb. And this actually raised 10 million. Whereas here, it's very hard for me to raise, 2 or 4 million, let alone 10. It's totally different universes. Totally different universes.
I think to the extent that I think it's this pet peeve about Europe, and like people always like to make fun of bureaucracy, and I just don't think there's anybody who wants to found a company but doesn't do it because of the paperwork. Right? That is not intrinsically what is preventing people from starting businesses. Money, I think if we look at Sifted ranking on investors, we see actually the EIF, like the European Investment Fund, is one of the biggest investors. So somehow we talk about risk-averse government, but they're the biggest investor in European startups, and I think, and to the point that is why SF works, is because everybody there has the mindset that there's only one option, and that is to build the next biggest unicorn and take the biggest risk. And I think that is maybe an unpleasant information to get to hear as a European who's building Europe. That a large part of it comes from mindset of founders themselves or people that are working.
Look, 2 months ago, I had the opportunity to become a VC. The investment was 20 million. And then basically I would have to split my company in half and basically give up the other people. And I would be able to be a proper VC, but just with 3 of my partners. And this was an actual proposal by the British Business Bank. And we said no. The thing is, these bucket loads of money, they come with obviously a huge amount of conditions, I could only invest in exterior people, obviously not my startup studio. That would bring a governance problem. But what I realized is that these buckets of money, they are coming with a straight jacket. And what I can tell you, and I'm going to finish now, is this. One of our advisors, Manuel, who lives in Portugal, but actually made the deal through Singapore, this happened. So we're talking about the real case, and this is the only value of this convo. It's the real value. So this was a Norwegian, something in the Nordics startup. They had developed drones, and these drones were used by electric power companies to check their cables if they were working well, which is a rather strong machine learning business case, very strong indeed. They had the data there of not only the cables but the farms, the fields. So they basically went there and said, farmers, do you want something to analyze the quality of your earth? The farmer said yes, lovely. The VC said no. The VC said, no, I only invest in electric-related startups. I can't invest in farm-related startups. And this, from a machine learning perspective, is just a derivative product. So it's totally ridiculous for a VC to say anything like it. And then they said no. You know what happened? What happened was that in the space of 3 days, Manuel called a friend that he has in Shanghai. The Chinese were setting up company in the Netherlands. Actually, they used that company to sell Chinese technology to the farmers in whatever country it was, and in 48 hours they were selling the same technology backwards to Brazil. Because unfortunately, or fortunately for the Chinese, unfortunately for us, Manuel also knows a few Brazilian big farmers. So the Chinese circled the world in 3 days, while the European VCs were looking at the set of regulation that allow them or not allow them or etc. to invest in a almost risk-free investment, which is a derivative machine learning product of a startup that just wanted to sell more. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. We need to change. We need to wake up.
But I think the problem is that the reason why the British investment bank doesn't want you to invest in startups in Brazil is because they believe that they need to keep the money here because European money.
British investment is one thing. That was just part of the story. Forget about the British bank, and this was a proposal to us, so that's unrelated. What I'm talking about is a particular case where a VC in the north of Europe didn't give their startup more money to develop a derivative product when they had customers. And we witnessed a Chinese-based company selling their technology here and doing the round around the globe in 3 days, while European VCs are looking at flies. I don't know how to call it.
Just one.
Sorry for the clarification.
No, just one also. It's something that for me is very interesting over the past days. Looking at it, you should consider that when OpenAI came, it was 22, right? November 22, if I'm not mistaken. When it came, there was all these pushbacks that in Europe, companies was blocking. Italy completely blocked ChatGPT for the whole country for a few months, and all these things can. And still, it's not regulated, right? It's not fully regulated. We have the AI Act and those things, and they try to adhere to that. But suddenly, they have seen that they cannot kind of resist the movement, right? And they open up kind of silently. Now, it was in the news, I think 2 days ago in Netherlands, that the court sent few warnings to lawyers, which were using references to the cases that didn't exist. So they use ChatGPT for copy paste. I mean, this is something that's also on the contradictory. While when you go and face the bureaucracy, they are very restricted, and I appreciate it. There's reason behind it. But you see, anyway, the US companies open up to the market without ST adhering to full that, because they cannot prevent the push, they cannot prevent the movement in the market. So I think sometimes there should be, is like you have these free tax zones in some countries, right? I think there should be some places like that, or to a certain level, accepting the risk to do it before we are being eaten. And also, this is like the very obvious for the past years. All the good startups in Europe being acquired by the US people. I mean, we are very good in security now, and Nordics is now the hottest place on earth. Any startup you build there, people are gonna come and put few million in it.
The KPI is simple. The KPI is simple. Cross-border investment from VCs in all of Europe is in the region of 22%. That means that Europe is a collection of silos, that VCs from each country only invest in their stuff. And we don't have pan-European companies because, as someone has said here, I don't remember who, the market is blocked by a lot of multinationals. And what most people don't realize, but I can share and tell you, is that it's a very hit and miss. So when people speak regulation, what they don't realize is that European regulators, and I could name here a few, but probably the police would come the next day. European regulators, they allow big companies to do whatever, honestly, whatever. I mean, some time ago, I was in the position to see a bank by the Netherlands setting up an insurance/health data marketplace over 6 countries with no controls whatsoever. If I was a startup, I would have a morning raid the next day. My company would be destroyed. But because it's a big company, although with no controls, the big company can do it. So what's the story here? We're talking that big European businesses, big corporations can do whatever they like, and that us startups cannot. I'm sorry, but I'm very no BS, and I've actually been there in the belly of the beast in these meetings. So I don't have patience for this oversimplification that Europe is terrible. No, look. We have business opportunities here. We must be able to have a regulatory, let's say, environment that everybody has the same level playing field, which is, if I'm a startup, I can access the market. I don't have, particular better treatment because I'm a big company. Why? Why on earth? In fact, Europe doing this is stalling competitivity, stalling regulation, and saying, I actually want my startups to be small so they can be bought by the US, which is what happens usually. Because the big European companies, they are running these marketplaces with no controls whatsoever. And we, entrepreneurs, if we did the same, we would be destroyed in 24 hours. So I had this conversation to regulators just a couple of weeks ago. We launched at FCA, and I told them to their face, look, this is all very nice, but regulation applies to everybody.
And I'm curious.
If you're going to start pick and choose.
I'm curious what you guys think that that new directive that was being pushed by the European Union to get like the EU Corp, or making it super easy to open a company and move the money around the different countries within the EU. How do you think that's going to help or maybe hinder this situation that we were just talking, right? Like only 22% is invested outside of the countries, the majority is invested within the same countries.
the specific question you put forth, Rui, but I think I want to build up on the aspect of the regulators and the experience that I had with the drone company. That was 2018, 19, 20. We got an opportunity to sit in the Brussels rulemaking body with the rest of the drone players out there, the Google Wings, the Amazon drone deliveries, Pizza Huts, and all kinds of people there. It was a quite packed room, and we happened to attend it every month without missing it. We just saw the ball was not rolling, but it wasn't even moving, especially when it comes to, you were like dying inside, asking a question. Just give us a clean slate of 20-point rules that can allow us to really operate in the green zones of Netherlands, right? The drone zones, basically flying zones. And that wasn't clear because people are still fighting with the color codings, the lighting protocols, and the flight path with the local regulators. So there's a lot of these conflict points that even today, I think, I didn't follow it after I shut that down, but even today, the respective zones in the US and in India, the drone rules have taken almost like a production grade. People are actually even commercializing on top of that. Within the Netherlands, we still do not see anything beyond the NWB and the PostNL, perhaps, using the very localized applications of the industrial drones, but not necessarily at a commercial grade. So that's what I've seen and I come from. But when I look at it now, also answering to what Christoph mentioned before, I want to touch upon that. Christoph said, hey, you know what, we have got people and everything, but speed is in the US, but why are not people here coming up with that startup mindset? I think the point, if I get your question right, Christoph, what came to my mind is I ended up working with interns to almost quite experienced people in the last 25 years or so. What I've noticed is I think there is a peculiar quality that is needed for a startup founder. Right? And also there should be something inside, it's very difficult to explain, is you should see the end of the light in the tunnel, but you don't know how to get there, but you should have the perseverance to really get there. I think that quality is what very rare to find in Europe, I must say. I find really smart people. I think they're quite good at research or quite good at hardworking or even looking at it in a structural way and coming up with a structural solution, not band-aids, right? But I think that quality is very rare. And that is what we are all after, I think, right? To find out who is our next early team member, 4 team members and stuff like that. I think those two is what, happy to, hear out what you guys think in those lines. And also, I don't have any comments on your question, Rui, but yeah, sorry to interject them.
It's a good point.
I think. Sorry, go, Madi.
Go ahead, Amr. I want to cut it from another aspect, to be honest, which is bothering for years living in Europe. I'm Iranian, and of course, Middle East culture or Persian culture is totally different. We are kind of a bit of capitalism, more North American way of living. Yeah, if you are money, either you are very rich or you are very poor. I mean, that's how the game goes in our country. But in Europe, living here, and I live in Italy for a few years and worked there, I think the culture difference is a killer, to be honest. We call it the European Union, but everyone has its own biases on the culture. There is too many languages. And I think that makes a very, very hard kind of community to build upon. That's why I think that the percentage of 20% external, 80% internal, I think that makes sense. Because it's about culture, it's about language. And there's quite a difference. Even Netherlands, next door is Germany, next door is Belgium. They're quite different people and quite different cultures, quite different look at things. Also, the purchase power is different. And at the same time, also the taste of customers is different. So you have a variety of type of people to cover. And I think one of the things I always see, it's about, I work in IKEA as well for 4 years, and even Swedish people are even worse than maybe Dutch people when it comes to making decisions. But it's about something Dutch people have, they call it polderen, which means they should come to a room and everyone should
agree to a decision to make a decision, I think that's also something that kills the spirit. And when we want to have everyone consent around the table to make a decision, that makes hard to move. I think sometimes you just need to cut and make a decision and accept the risk. So I think what I lack, to be honest, when it comes to leadership in Europe, is about making decisions. And they try to not be the person named on the decision, to not be accountable for the consequences. So they just, and that's why the whole room should say it. So then we agree all together. I think that I've observed that in quite different places.
I actually agree.
Totally supportive.
Because
I think one thing that can go against this or help at least a bit is this EU Inc. initiative, right? I think like having an entity that's cross Europe, where like we still have like hundreds of different cultures, but like I'm German living in the Netherlands. I now want to raise money. Like all the German investors would be like, yeah, but these Dutch entities like makes everything like more complex, right? In the States, there's the Delaware LLC thingy that everybody's just doing. I'm in group chats with founders and they're like, yeah, I want to start in Europe, but I'm just going to do an LLC anyway, because that's just easier from an investor perspective, right? And that's not where we want to be as Europe, I think. And I think this EU Inc. is a perfect, it's at least a good first step. No, it's not going to solve all problems, but maybe it does also.
Don't you think that EU Inc. will just remove a lot of pure paper Delaware flips? So like I don't think there's going to be one company extra founded due to EU Inc. Like that's not my. I don't think it is. So I think it helps in the sense that like as European, you can have a larger set of people that you can talk about. Like, hey, how did you do EU Inc? So that can help, like that kind of network effect. But I really don't. Like I'm skeptical that we're going to see more companies due to the EU Inc. Not saying that it's a bad initiative. I think it's very good, and standardization is in that
maybe
sense.
they survive a bit longer. Maybe they raise a bit more money. I think it's not going to change the mindset probably, right? Like, but maybe even like there's going to be more standards, so there's a tiny bit less of a hurdle to start, right? Like in the Netherlands, actually, I think it's super easy and like starting a company. Like, but like I have some friends trying the same in Germany, and you need like massive upfront capital, like pay a bunch of lawyers. There's like we don't know how bad it can be, like being here in the Netherlands, I think.
It's much more expensive to have a business here. It's as simple as that. Way more expensive and complex. But I mean, there's if I go to Germany and I want to actually register, I have to go to the notary by myself and pay someone in the region of 60 to 80K to register a company properly. Are you joking?
So I understand that there are differences, and I do understand that they can like be a hurdle.
100K is a huge amount of runway.
That's definitely true. But so my feeling is that like the people that maybe you're gonna get artificially more companies because it's easier to found one, but the amount of successful ones is gonna stay exactly the same. And I think what is an interesting place to look at is actually startup employees. So startup companies, like let's say people believe that that's a good goal to go towards, but there are reasons that these are not happening. Could be bureaucracy, could be cost, could be funding. Okay, but then I think if we look at, and I don't have those numbers, but like I think if we, especially in like SF, the amount of people that are working at a startup is huge. And like I think that creates a lot of founders that then after they have worked at a startup believe, no, now I want to do my own startup. I think the amount of people that, if you would look in Amsterdam, work within a startup compared to working in a big corporate, very skewed. I would say we are almost completely opposite. Like almost everybody works for a big company, which makes the step to founding a company much bigger. And I think that hurdle is a lot bigger than bureaucratic or cost incentives.
Which that also points out to the employment law. So I don't know exactly what would be like the employment law on this new initiative on EU Inc. Because then, like when you're running a startup, definitely you cannot afford to hire somebody full time, especially with the protection laws that come with it. So, at least like I personally, if let's say EU Inc. Would be would, how do you say, ease employment law, then it will be a lot more comfortable to actually hire someone to make commitment to somebody. Okay, well, let's do something rather than having basically getting yourself stuck in a situation under uncertainty. You have to work with freelancers, or like it's basically everything becomes more expensive. And then so then you don't hire, and then that makes it also more difficult to basically build a company and grow.
I think, and Nestor, totally agree with you, because also I was advising a company in Canada. They were based in Vancouver. And they were working on it's called PavePal. They were working on the Paves with AI stuff. And interesting thing was about the laws that I got to know a few years ago. It's about in Canada, for example, the government support you in a way that you hire people for the longer time, like you give them at least a 1 year contract or 2 years contract, rather than a 0 hour. In the Netherlands, the safe thing you can do is 0 hour, right? Then you pay them when they work, and then there's less of obligations on the law. But and then the Canadian government were supporting to pay back them as subsidies 85% of that salary. So you could have a full-time employee by just 20% of the cost of the person. And it was very achievable. So you could have a PhD, or you could get PhD students or PhD graduates for just 20K a year. It was quite cheap. So I think those are the subsidy and supports that you have, for example, I know in Canada that you have from the government. And they were just giving it to the startup, to the certain level of number of employees you have. So we were going above, I don't know, a certain number, 10, 20, whatever, that subsidy was gone because you are able to stand by yourself. But that's the thing, I think, what you're touching on, Nasir, that will be an amazing help in Europe, that you can easily build your first team to scale and to deliver more.
Is it tax revenue? Where does that come from, that subsidy?
So I don't exactly know it's about the name of it, but it's about the startups that can hire especially high educated people to help the employment rate in Canada by just hiring them directly from university or working with.
Let's put that at the difference. In the UK, I can hire someone for a month, and that thing will give me an innovation, whatever that they call it, an innovation grant that is basically managed by a university. So the entrepreneur basically looks at this and says, I'm not going to even move. Why should I move? I'm just going to use my money and I'm going to hire someone, I don't know, in Brazil or, some of those countries, whatever country it is, when I can leverage. Indonesia has the highest in the world rate between money to cost of live. Entrepreneurs, in the end of the day, we need to be quite practical and considering the million constraints that I have around me, which things are actually a good decision that actually brings value, long-term value building, asset building. Because what we're doing is assets. We're building assets. At the end of the day, we have to have this perspective in all of our decision making, and the structures around us, from grants, from government, often, I gotta say, they are performative startups. They are performing innovation. They are pretending that they do something, and we need to actually do it.
So, after ranting enough about the current state of situation, right? I'm very curious how each one of us are actually navigating this, right, in our own way, and still able to thrive and make progress. I'm really curious if you can share a bit of a tidbits around it. I think that our listeners can also benefit, probably, including us. How are we navigating it? In the staffing, in the funding, whatever, right? Whatever comes to your mind. I'm curious.
Oh, actually, so the situation is what it is. So let's say for hiring, I personally work remote, side Europe, working with trying to find engineers who are good and work closely, and then I think that's the That's the main thing that at least I'm dealing with, and yeah, and then trying to get yourself, like, you know, as an entrepreneur, you just try to solve problems. Like whatever the brick is thrown at you, you try to dodge or get a hit, and then get up and take the next one. So I personally try not to complain too much. Like once in a while there is an initiative, like I don't know, this evening, try to support, to be there, and then just focus on the task at hand. So that's my philosophy, at least.
I think it really goes well with what Robert mentioned, right? The number of startup employees, if you measure it, if all the jobs are going remote, then that KPI will never go up, you know? So, but thanks, Nazir, for sharing that.
I think also so, like, for example, from a technical perspective, I don't like the idea of offshoring my work to kind of like lower pay, high, like kind of setting. And I think we also now have the benefit of having almost the cheapest developers in our hands, which are agents. So I think the team, or like the way that that startups are being created is changing rapidly. I think smaller teams is coming into play, into vogue, let's say. I think that's very nice. In person is a trend I think I'm seeing. I'm not sure if I agree with that, like the benefits that I mentioned, but there are people paying 150, 200,000 euros for a developer in San Francisco because they want to be there as a group. Well, they could also get for a lot cheaper somewhere else. So I think like it's looking at trends that you are seeing that work for some places, and then seeing if they can work for you, or that maybe with a small tweak they can actually give you a strength where instead of like a weakness. So I think for me that is always the biggest reason. And I think if you wait for legislation to change, you can wait until forever. Like just seeing like with the current constraints, how can I make the most of my situation, I think is the only way that you can take control of the situation.
Right, from a staffing perspective, any other navigations that you guys had to go through? I think Nazir shared one, and Robert, you as well. Sorry, Rui, I'm a bit of a proxy taking your seat, but I'm curious.
I think for me, I just didn't hire anybody so far, and probably that's partly because it's like seems difficult, but also because agents are there and like coding is just so much easier. It just didn't seem as necessary as maybe it would have been like a few years ago, right? But I am getting my first few interns now, so we'll see how that's going to go.
It's wonderful. I think that's where also what I think Robert mentioned, I also mentioned in the early conversations, right? The micro teams is getting really, really more prominent, and I think 2-3 complementary people really knows their craft deep down, and with the overarching mindset, I think is really the way to go. Indeed.
Did anybody try OpenClaw already? Speaking of hiring people,
in isolation.
No way.
I run it.
it's European conservatism here. That's going.
I run a tech studio. This means data sets from all sorts of different people, companies, B2B, including regulators. No way I'm setting fire to this sort of environment. No way. Controlling, so deployed in a closed machine, yeah, fine, doable. But I have other more important things to do than setting fire to a machine.
But I think this is a very important one. I highly recommend to look at it. I tried in a bit of...
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. We are an LLM's native studio.
No, I understand.
We use extensively, Yeah,
there is more coming, right? It's not open cloud anymore. There's nano cloud. There's blah, blah, blah cloud. There's a lot of cloud coming now. I think it's good just to,
one thing I'd say about agents and studios, Look, I've been into the bootcamp of global studios, the best of the world. I've seen people, I can write a thesis of a studio in 40 minutes of processing and X amount of credits and etc. Look, let's get real. Those are selling platforms of possible products on a consulting outlook. They're not real studios. A real studio is a bunch of entrepreneurs who have real life experience, and with each other, they find things that matter to them enough for them to go through the pain of actually building a company. It's not just an asset. Look, it's so painful that, as everybody here knows, you got to really believe in the stuff that you're doing, and you need to be human about it. If you're just if it's just data or SaaS or something on top of something, it's just a business. It's not the reason why you're fighting. So that doesn't work. That's my opinion about that combination. Last but not least, technically, well, it's complexity. As soon as we arrive to the second or third variation of complexity, it all breaks down. So what were we talking about here? There's a lot more.
Maybe I'm going to hijack the idea of Ram and ask some other questions. I'm curious, like we talked about Europe and US and everything. It's like, do you guys actively sell to this? Like, do you feel like your customer base is then also mostly European? Like, do you try to actively sell
my first customer?
I was thinking more maybe Nasir or Rob.
Oh, sorry.
People who are building something.
I get excited sometimes.
I see. Yeah.
So actually, yes, in Europe, we have been actually focused on Europe start with, but it's we're now considering trying out the US market because the process, actually, let's put it this way, like the sales cycle of the same product in Europe, at least in the Netherlands, we feel it's a lot longer compared to US, right? So, and the market is bigger, in fact. So, but so far our goal is still, but the competition in the US is like a lot more massive. It's a lot more. So it's an AI business. It's, I think personally, like it's easier to, in some way, the market is less, it's more ripe as well, and you can, if you have a good, how do you say, local presence, and if you know the local market, which my partner, for example, has in the area, in the marketing area we're working on, it could actually be quite effective, because then you build partnership, you find the right people, and that's not the case in the US. So some like US customers with time zones would be very difficult to kind of organize it. At the same time, they enter the credit cards a lot faster than the European market. So it's a bit of a, at the moment we're actually experimenting. So we have good reception in Europe, and now we're trying to see how it actually performs in the US. We already see like get a, how do you say, less response rate, but quicker. So that's kind of a bit of our data points are still small, more or less from the US. So we're experimenting to see how it turns out. So
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I've noticed is that like your network tends to be around your geographic location. So like I mostly know founders in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Germany, France. When you do outreach, theoretically you could reach out to anybody in the world. And the US has a lot of agent builders, so it would be a logical location. But you see the nearest connection with local builders. So actually, I think for me, I always try to stress that like that's the kind of initial market that I would like to address. Where I think also it helps to have the right kind of problem. So an agent builder that is building an agent for compliance reasons in UK tends to match the same kind of problems, like maybe the way that they think about certain concepts match a lot of our thinking, where maybe that in the US is very different, even regardless of like regulations or stuff.
Thanks. Now I have a question for Christoph, maybe. So responding with a question. So, and for everybody else actually, because I'm in the AI business and I'm getting AI fatigue myself. I think Maddie mentioned also OpenClaw. So okay, I'm personally curious. I like this stuff. I go try it out and then try to play around with it. But these days, like for anybody, well, online of course, but even digitally or even physically, when I talk to people who actually, my tax advisor even like saying, "Oh, I made this," and that's like kind of I want to know how you guys actually go about that, and like, do you get carried away by technology, how it's progressing, and how do you kind of feel about it as this market moves so incredibly fast?
It's funny because like I feel like it's moving so fast, and like I'm kind of getting lost all the time because there's like so much development, right? Like if you just like look at Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. But then in reality, like when I'm actually using the tools, I'm like I gave a talk yesterday at the Cursor meetup about something that I call like AI rage. Like I just get like angry like on a different level when I try to code with AI and like it's again not doing what I wanted to do, right? It's like really deep down. Like I was a manager before. I think I was a good manager. Like with my AIs, I'm a terrible manager, like very abusive. And I think that's born out of this, like you see all these stories of like everything is exploding, right? But then in reality, it's just like we had like the desktop clicking thing by OpenAI about a year ago, and like it's still not working, right? Like how hard can it be to have a thing like click buttons on a desktop, right? Like I think expectation in reality is just like slowly diverging like crazy. I have so many friends who started vibe coding something and they got like 80% there, and now they're like, okay, like it's like so hard. I'll just hire an engineer to like finish the project for me, and they haven't found somebody yet. I think it's also like not a very popular thing to do, and you probably have to. Yeah, it's hard. So that helps me to ground myself always a little bit when I feel like I'm just getting lost in all the futuristic chaos.
I think, to be honest, the main thing is, if you remember, there was this guy called Rabbit R1. Who bought this scam? I bought this scam. It came when the whole thing came, right? And then I was one of the first 10,000 ordering it and getting it, and still I have this drawer to look at it from time to time. Oh, what a great marketing and scam. Still they send updates. But the main thing is, I do feel what you said is true, and I do feel the art of these days is slowing down rather than just get lost with the speed, because each is really empty. A lot of these are empty, and also they are just trying to do a lot of marketing while the reality is quite off. And like the frontier from OpenAI. And then you have the day after, Google should release another thing. And so now you have Google Studio. Now Google is everywhere. The Gemini is active everywhere. But then the quality of outcome, questionable. So I think that's the thing. I think as tech people, what we have is, I think, a benefit is we can slow things down. And we can really, I mean, for me, is always get back to the root, which is problem solving. And don't get really lost by all these noises. And everyone is using AI and everyone is doing it, and everyone feels, I call it the three illusions. The main illusion that people get lost with it is the illusion of wrapper. That they wrap something with an AI API in it, and then they say, oh, now we have a new product that's gonna make us millionaire. I think these illusions are too much these days, and I try to stay away from the noise. While I'm trying everything, but I just know the reality is just architecting and solution making. It's not anything different from the past.
Indeed, I think when I look back 5-6 years ago, I remember reading a blog from a well-known author, and he said there will be an iPhone-like moment every hour in 2030. I think it looks like it's getting even closer. that we were like wowed by the impact it created, the app stores and everything after the iPhone launch, right? And it's getting real. I mean, my feed is just getting bombarded, and every time I keep liking stuff that I could read later, and that just grows up, because everything is interesting in a different dimension. And I think they really like what Madhi said, and I also tell it to my kids as well, is I think the 101s and 202s, everyone must master. And I have had a few interns in the new stealth that I'm starting up now, and I keep telling them, I don't want software developers, I want software engineers. There's a big difference there. Is you got to understand the foundations. Today it is bits and bytes. Probably tomorrow it's going to be qubits. But I just really want you to really understand the basics and build on top of that. Understand the IP, understand the protocols, the network layer, everything. Please just do not start by coding. And also to come back on that topic, right, with what Christoph you mentioned, you can do vibe coding and it's getting a bit of overkill in sometimes. And bit of an experiment that we did 3 months ago is that, hey, you know what, vibe coding is what we do. Let's move to the other side of the spectrum and let's try really the spec-driven development. Let's not even look at the results. Let's not even interrupt. Let's try to completely go headless. So we started adopting the spec flow, a spec kit, and all of that. We went big way there. 2 weeks of experiment, and we realized that it was we were autopilot basically. No steering wheel, no brakes. It wasn't really cool. We weren't getting the output that we wanted. So as you were mentioning, the hype is at a different level than the reality that I could really take as a takeaway. So I can't do any commit on that level. So we came to a middle ground. So for the last 2 months, we are operating in that middle ground, which is leveraging the agents MD, the agent skills, and all kinds of the dictionaries around the IDE. So at least we are there. We are kind of putting the fences around and still vibing, but not truly blindfolding. So blindfolding and the autopilot, we are somewhere in the middle. Curious how you guys think.
Maybe I can add something of value. What I would say of value is that it's dangerous. There is a lot of creativity, yes, and we have to realize that obviously these products are interesting. It's very interesting to ship 100 different products, but the truth is that they're not scalable. They're not scalable products, and we all know this very well. As soon as something reaches a product maturity that requires quite a lot of surgical change, what we know from the outside world is that these products are not scalable. Often we lose months and months and months and end up reaching the hard conclusion that we've just lost 10 months and that actually we need to build it as it should have been from scratch. And actually my question, the hard question is, why haven't we done it in the first place? Maybe there's just a phase here where we ship all of this vibe coded stuff very fast and we make bets, but we make the bets. We don't complain of the technology. We don't say that we're going to scale up a huge thing based on a boat of paper. We need a real boat. It's not a boat of paper. So let's get real. This is what I'm saying. And last but not least, I had a person who hallucinated, and this was a very smart person. And because he used an LLM to query large parts of information, he arrived to a certain conclusion. And then he convinced himself that this was real. And then he just went away without speaking with us. And this was a quite smart person. And I'm telling you guys, this was wow. This person actively hallucinated something, convinced himself because of the mirror effect, and just went away.
And Antonio,
Wow.
Yeah, can I just? I want to just also just let's get clear. I mean, from my perspective, not all the companies are about to stay for years. Some companies are just here to earn a few millions and then die. Fine. I mean, you can be an entrepreneur. You want to put some money in pockets, and I totally respect that. Let's not consider everyone should be Google and living forever. Another thing is, a lot of companies I see, and I would like to build such of those companies, is just to be the small fishes being eaten by the bigger fishes. I mean, that's the best exit. So
And that's
if you, so that's why I think the exit strategy is not always the same. So that's why there are people that we did vibe coding and still sold it, and of course it was just a sell and then done. But also I think the main problem with vibe coding all these things is about make it productionized, right? There's something is production ready to go. It's not about just experimenting, and I think that's the place that kind of what Christoph mentioned, that they need the person that
possible.
does 10%, 20%, which I think it's. I was to be honest, for the past year, I'm thinking why I'm not opening a startup or a company, a consultancy, which just go who is doing vibe coding. I'm here to help you the last 10% to do. I think there's going to be many of them, and then it's lovable. Then I would say lovable helper.
I think that's called a vibe janitor. They have a term for this.
That's
Vibe janitor. Oh God. Oh, God.
You are gonna work. I mean, maybe you're gonna fade out in 2 years. You're gonna get good money out of it, and then die. That's fine. But I think that's what I want to say. I think it's not about just always go by the books. It's just about the smartness to see a vibe. It's just about when there is gold, then sell the shovels, right? So Google will do that. It's like about the Bitcoin hype. For me, it's like the stock market whenever I think about businesses, because you can be a daily trader, you can be a weekly trader, you can be a long-term trader. It's about what you're gonna do with the idea. And I think there was a lot of companies built 4 years ago, which we don't know the names anymore, but they got millions. So I think this is also the beauty of AI, that you can become a millionaire, like a Bitcoin.
I think also it depends a bit on like who's asking for advice, right? If you think about it from like if 1,000 startup people are asking advice as a group, you could argue, well, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. What we're basically doing now is we're saying what we did normally with VC, we're now doing like even bigger by just doing more bets, and then some of them will, by sheer luck, vibe code something that is useful and scalable. And the 999 that fail, we will never talk about, and everybody will say vibe coding is great. And like if one person in those 1,000 startups asks for advice on how to better use vibe coding, then it's very tricky, right? Because then like it doesn't really help to stay that person. It doesn't really matter what you do. If you're lucky, you'll win. So I think like in vibe coding as an individual developer, it has always been a bit the same, right? Like even if you write code by hand, there's going to be a moment where you think you're doing everything right and there's a bug. I think the problem with vibe coding is probably those bugs get more complex because you have already written more before you find it, and also like you can get yourself in a problem where you don't have the skills to solve them, where that is just less likely when you are like writing everything yourself, because you can surprise yourself, right? So I think you need to change a bit how you develop, and you also need to find out what works with you. So some people they are fine by not looking at the code and being waken up at night because something broke in their platform. Others say no, for me everything that goes to production needs to be completely tested and fully. So I think like with normal development, also with vibe coding or agentic engineering, the term that now we're hearing, people are going to have different styles, and that is, I think, something that you need to find. So again, you need to try things out. And Christoph, too, I think it was your question: how are you using these tools, or do you feel, or I don't know who asked, but like I think that is the biggest important. Pick it up, try it out, OpenClaw, try it out, see what you like, what you don't like, and then go back and having the energy to keep doing that because it goes really fast. I think that is a super important value that you can have in this time.
And I really
I
like
think
the
it's
2 points.
actually. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to circle back here before, because I really like 2 points that were mentioned here by both Madi and Robert. It's like if anyone is listening to this and thinking about building their own company, being an entrepreneur, there is levels of this thing. Like it's not all the same. Like you can be the one that builds a quick thing, like as we saw many apps like Instagram, then it gets bought up by Meta, and you just have that idea and you don't need to automatically lock yourself in the idea that, oh, I'm going to build a business for the next 10 years. And that's the same thing with the vibe coding. Like you use the tools as you are, and maybe you're going to end up getting stuck, and maybe you need to reach out to your community to get unstuck by there. But I think the important point is that if you have an idea, just try it. Like the best time to do it is now. Like there is no better time than that. And I'll pass the ball to you, Nasir.
Look, no customer cares if we've done this vibe coded or if it's just done that way, right? Like if it's engine. The problem is that the cost of producing code has gone to zero, so I can try out everything. So I think like entrepreneurs, like the startups, companies, the biggest challenge they're facing is what not to build, to kind of contain themselves into, hey, I know this, I could do this, but should I be doing that? Because you're just one prompt away to adding extra technical debt, extra features, extra confusion to your customer. And then one theme that we always see that discussed the least is the customer. I mean, so that's where like that's where the focus should be. So that when I'm actually talking also with the partner that we're working with, so he's a marketer, so he doesn't know how to code, but like we've created some like system for him so he can actually build some and iterate on some part of the product, but at the same time trying to take away, not give too much freedom there, because then he just would go wild, like, oh, I have this idea, I have that idea, like build, and then I just don't want to build. I just want to only build what's maybe with what is going to move the needle, because otherwise, like we're gonna end up with this like Discord if you open. that's basically I think quite important to just be able to ground ourselves into not building what we can build.
But just one thing, exactly, I think what you mentioned, Nasir, but I did a presentation 2 weeks ago, was about a community called AI for All, and I did a presentation about the newest startups in the AI boom, which is the one slide I think is summarizing what you said, which maybe I can share for you how I see it, like how in 30 days what you should do. And I think the first 1 or 2 weeks you should focus on your ICP, right, on your ideal customer profile. Find them, get inputs from them, then start manually creating outcomes, and then doing the last step. Otherwise, if you see weak signal, just kill it. This is not something that you need to build anything about. But I want to just also highlight on the vibe coding, what I really appreciate about it is that we are getting away from PowerPoints, and then we get more demos earlier, and I love it. I mean, but just I now my person to go is Figma Make. I just go there if there's a startup thing. I see it, just even I get for review the pitch. I put the pitch deck there and say just build something that it's adhere to this product, and I start seeing something visual that I can click around and whatever. And the code is there. I also copy paste it. I can even tweak it myself. So I think that part of vibe coding is something that I really like. So it's very nice.
It's an interesting paradigm shift that I was having that discussion as well with the product owner that I worked with, and he was talking about it. Like we were reflecting on an application that he vibe coded, and now it was looking really cool. And we were like we are moving away from that gigantic need of doing customer discovery, and you just spend endless meetings with the customer trying to figure out really what you need to build, and now you can just quickly prototype something and just go in front of someone and just have a demo and see, is this exactly what you are talking about, and then get the feedback. Oh no, it wasn't this, you need to change it here and there, and it makes it for a much better experience, at least for the development side.
And to be honest, the UXs are changing now, and that's what I love. So the UX is now taking the job of the developers. And I know a few of my UXs that I work with them, what they do, they directly design inside Make or design inside Figma, and then Figma have the import in Make. So they're already running it themselves instead of the All we had these prototypes inside the Figma that you could drag and drop, whatever. But now it's real because you can now also mimic that and mock it and whatever, and they can really get the first-hand interactions. And then consider as a developer, you just get that. Of course, it can convert easily to the tickets or whatever, but I still you have the base to start from. And I think that's something that I like. There is a kind of a left shift or shift left the pipeline, that the people get empowered in the beginning, that there is less noise or more valuable work for the developers to do rather than any idea just land to their table. There's more of a filters in the stage below. I think that's what I see.
It might also help us to understand perhaps the journey that we are taking in the last few months is also on the same lines, Madhi. The UX takes care of the design principles and the language and everything. And once the design elements are there, what we started calling them inside is called micro experiences. So that is the real code, but not built by the developer, but really by coding it based on the critical thinking, the creativity aspect of the humans, right? And then we put this micro experience in front of our potential customers. And then they give us the feedback, audio, video, text, chat, schedule a meeting, whatever. Once we get all that, again, we use agents for our internal efficiency reasons as well to kind of summarize, hey, what does it really matter for us to really invest? And then the developer comes into picture in a traditional way, in a structural way to really build on top of it. You're right, Nazir, building code is easy, but removing lines of code is the difficult, right? So absolutely. Yeah, so the micro experience is the needle where I'm also seeing from a UX to development is not what we also experience now, is UX to micro experience to then validate with customer before you actually even develop, right? That's kind of thought I'll add that one up for you.
Yeah, shifting the discovery to the left even more.
I do think one of the problems of everything is easier is now that also customers expect more, right? So like maybe 10 years ago, you say, hey, I have a slide deck. And this is how I think the app would work. Would you like that? Oh, that's actually, yeah, that's good. Now they're like, why can I try that? Why am I looking at slides? I want to be clicking. I want to be experiencing. So like it is a blessing and a curse, I would say, on the same side, I've noticed.
Humans are actually really good at adapting very fast. Like what we used to was it like I like the analogy I use, like you would use, let's say, build a user interface like I compare it like a shotgun and a sniper, right? Like before, like you would use a shotgun where like different kind of profile, different kind of people had to kind of adapt themselves to your user interface, and then even different ICPs had to kind of use that. But then now you have to really be like typing the user experience where it has to flow in just like fully in the experience of the users, because the moment at any given part that person is kind of bored because of all these different kind of other UXs, all these experiences, you have a churn, they drop out. Then you have to kind of find out the signal within the noise with possibly the same effort and that you used to do, because the market has shifted, the behavior of the customers have changed, and then you have to match that. So the game is still the same. The playing field has changed.
Now, so you touched upon something that I would like to drop the bomb and see how the people feel about that. Apart from all this ICP and stuff, one thing is really keeping me busy thinking about is the new generation. Yeah, we are becoming old, guys. Let's accept that, the fact. And then our user is going to be the Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And those people have a time span focus of 2 seconds of TikTok. And that's a different game. I was just wondering, an open question, how you guys are keeping up with this demand of coming from the new generation to, because they're going to be at the end, the main users, if you consider the population. How do you see?
I'll not sell to them.
You're not selling to them?
No.
Okay, that's a good strategy, of course.
To my daughter, right? She's the most critical, I would say, critique. If she's not using it, then there's something that I have to think about.
So I heard actually that when Snapchat was founded, the founder he really wanted to keep it only for the youth, because he said like social media is done by the youth, so he makes it needlessly complex to figure out how the UI works, so that you need to have somebody tells you how it works, and you tend to be younger when you are working together on figuring it out. So like I think bringing in those kind of like, I don't know if it's a dark pattern, but it is an interesting pattern that thinks about how different generations use your app. I think the traditional admin portal in the B2B SaaS world is definitely not the proof for the next generation, and somebody needs to figure out how to make it better for them. Yeah, 100%.
I'm hopeful. I'm recently at uni after many years doing a complexity master's. The guys are mostly very, very young, 20 something. They stick to their guns, you know. They're not following bullshit. They're doing their stuff that they like, in the way that they like it. And if they don't like it, if they don't like, you know, the bullshit or the ways of the money of the world or etc., they just don't do it at all. They just don't even engage, period. So they are more radical than I think we. And that's good. That's good because the world is turning into bullshit.
And I think
My
that's a beautiful way for us to end this table talk. But I want to drop also one question to every single one of you before we leave, because we talked about a lot in AI. So I'm curious, what is the one tool that over this past year, let's say 2025, that you could not live without from all of these AI tools that have been coming out? I can start myself if you want. I can tell you at least one that helps me a lot is all the LLMs. I'm using all of them at the same time in my browser. I have all the tabs. I have Perplexity next to OpenAI, next to Gemini, next to Qwen. And every time that I want to brainstorm something, I just drop the same prompt in all of them and see what comes out, and then I try to feed it to one and the other. And I really like to use it just as kind of a creative thing, just sparring partner. Not that I like what it produces, but usually, at least for me, it triggers other ideas that then I like to implement. So that's my guilty pleasure.
And then I go for Codex and Cloud Code, of course. Like the coding CLI tool is, I think if you would have told me a year ago that I would be spending most of my time in a terminal, I would have said you are absolutely crazy. And today I couldn't do without.
That's a beautiful one, because I just recently started using Gemini in the CLI, and my vibe coding world just opened up like 10x. I didn't know what I was doing before until I opened a CLI tool. Yeah.
For me, it's the Real AI Engineer, IDE, TRAE, Tray. Especially the solo mode it has. It kind of really powers up the game, especially when I join the hands with the other skills I mentioned, agent skills and the other Constitution MD files and agents.md and stuff. Yeah, it's powering up. I think it's like a 20x sort of my perspective. And the second thing also, right, for development, it's this tool that I cannot live without. But for the strategy, for thinking, I think I ended up creating different personas now in these Gemini and other places, right? So that's a constant pinned in chat that is meant for doing one thing well with all the background, right? So I'm just reaching out, he's my marketeer, or it is my marketeer, right? So that's kind of, focus chats with like a table talk chats, right? So it's kind of both sides that I can't live with. Next up.
I think Maddie posted something on the chat.
Yeah, I can go next. Basically, one thing it works for me for the development. I don't know if you guys use WARP. how to spell this tool. I love this terminal. I was one of the early adopters, and I'm collecting a lot of friend referrals.
It used to be free now. Now I need to pay.
Yeah. That's fine. It's painful, but those guys are amazing. So in the terminal, I did a lot for the past time with them. I do a lot of the wrap inside that. Of course, you can select different models. Also, anti-gravity. I use Cursor, I use VS Code, I used Kiro from AWS, but then I ended up with Google Anti-Gravity. I don't know, that has a good sense for me because he's coming from like it's like a solution architecting, and it feels good like that. So I'm using that for the past time. And I think one thing that I do on a daily basis and also personal stuff, I think ChatGPT is the heaviest because it was the earliest. And since I have a lot of context there now, it's very heavy to move. I was thinking about in a startup to move your chat from one to another. And I've seen Google is now testing it in an experiment to move your chat from one to another. And I knew it will come. But that's something that heavily make me dependent there, because one of the things I love to do is having one thread, which now the memories are increasing. And then you're journaling with one thread on your decisions and what you're doing. And then have reflections for the past 3 months, 6 months. What was the decision that I did? How I could do differently, and it can really become a kind of a strategic thinker. I really highly recommend, if you don't do it, if you do it, great, but do it for the next 6 months. There's magical things that it explore from your own decision. Just do a journaling of 5 minutes per day, talking to it on a voice, just record it for the future. What you did in that day, what decision you made, how it ended up at the end of the day. Then I think it really helps to reflect on yourself, because our memory is weak as a human. And I think one thing recently I loved about it's Opus Clip. Just got to know this tool, especially when you're doing YouTuber. You just put it there, and it's quite good to create some good short clips with the description. Just look at it, Opus Clip.
Yeah, I heard about that one. As I was investigating, because now I'm using DaVinci Resolve, so that's why I didn't add it as one of my tools. And DaVinci Resolve has like 10 different AI tools that automate my whole workflow from now. But the same guy that was teaching DaVinci Resolve, he was talking a lot about Opus Clip as a kind of an automation tool. Yeah, it's a good one.
I think I've been a loyal customer of Claude Code since April. As today, I tried Codex very early, but now today was actually the second time I was actually trying Codex to solve something that I wasn't solving. But Claude Code has been for me fully a game changer. So
I think I switched between all of them, but the AI tool I use most is, of course, my own AI tool. It's Done That AI, and it's a bit what Madi just talked about. It's like it just records everything I do all the time, so it helps me both reflect and also just like when I know when AI is watching me working, I get lost less, and it holds me a bit more accountable than I think I otherwise would be.
So you are one of your
greatest
users, and that's a good thing.
I am definitely my longest user, that's for sure. I'm not the person who works the most on the app, so there are other people who put in more hours.
An interesting part of accountability, but also security in the sense of running our own stuff. Personally, I use Claude very extensively, but because of, obviously, we're an LLM studio, so I have a great variety, panopticon of all of the different stuff. I'd say, I don't know, but still, it changes a lot. Everybody has their own preferences. Everybody has their own habits, their own ways in which they've adapted to different tools. But I'd say that one of the most important things was that we noticed that we needed more alignment and more clarity and more leadership. So we actually discuss more now as a team. So we've grown as a team, but because for a time there was confusion and misalignment because people were building all sorts of other stuff. And actually the direction from a product perspective, technology perspective, it wasn't the same. So we actually, due to that pressure, we became better. But because we had that noise, because we said there is noise and we don't want it. So, but it was tough. It was tough to drop the ego and say, yeah, we've done this. It wasn't an easy discussion.
And is there any tool, before we leave, that you guys keep 100% away from?
Any CRM, any website builder.
So no WordPress for you.
No, that was never the case anyway. But yeah, no workflow, no WordPress.
Open claw.
We may change your mind until the end of the episode. Oh, I see Christoph had to leave. Yeah.
No, not really a way. I think, again, as I mentioned, I think, anything that is fundamentally closer to the basics, that you get you a bit of a power up, but not losing the control. I think that's kind of the balance, right? So I'm not very much of the fan of this bolt.new or lovable sort of things, wherein it's pretty opinionated. So it's not really the open source way of where I have my freedom of choosing the framework, choosing the runtime, choosing a lot of bells and whistles for how you want to do stuff for the interest of longevity, maintainability and stuff, right? So yeah, if there is one thing, then I would shy away from overly packaged sort of offerings, but stay close to the raw LLM power with a bit of a prompt coating maybe, that still gives you enough opportunity to stay flexible with agent skills and other stuff, right? Yeah.
And I think adding on what Ram said, I think one of the main things is important to consider. I mean, for me, Lovable would be in the category of WordPress in a few years. That's going to be the same category. People go for WordPress, will go for Lovable. But also at the same time, I think what I just recommend to not do, basically, or maybe seeing from that perspective as the last thing to say is, I think we always need to think about what's going to come in the next 2 releases from OpenAI and Anthropic, and not do them. I think it's a bit hard to think about future, but what we expect they're going towards, let's not just focus on spend energy and time to do that. And then I think we just need to focus on the workflows, which are boring, heavy, very heavy legislation workflows, which no big player will come and touch it because they don't have the time to do it. I think as I will focus on those flows, to be honest, rather than the most fancy things in the coming years.
Cool. I think it was a great conversation. It was the first time that we popped this bubble of the table talk, and you guys just nailed it. Thank you so much for coming here, sharing all your knowledge with the people that will be hearing this in the YouTube. And we have CyberJohn here listening to the Last Bit Live. So yeah, once again, guys, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, enjoy the day.
Cup after cup, stories unfold. Real people, real past, pure gold. From debug nights to breakthrough days, we laughed, we learned in so many ways. Coffee and bites, stories come alive. Humans behind the screen, we thrive. Inspiring journeys, no fluff, just fire. Thanks for sharing, take it higher. See you next cup. Keep the